For my spring break, my wife and I decided to take a trip to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. It was a long drive, but it was worth it. My wife ended up booking us a small cabin by a lake. It was very quaint and kind of out in the middle of nowhere. We visited Mammoth Cave, which has its own unique stories. But after a long day of trekking deep in the earth, we returned to the cabin. It was a very new cabin with a very fresh feel to it and seemed very homey. We ate some dinner and then headed for bed to end our long day. Whenever I stay at a new place, sometimes I have trouble sleeping that first night, and this place was no different. I tossed and turned and laid staring at the ceiling, and then I heard a noise. It sounded like wet feet on wood slapping on the floor outside of the bedroom. I wasn't sure what to make of it, and I even thought at one point I was dreaming. But I knew I was awake. I heard a whimpering coming from outside the bedroom.
Mama? Mama. I'm very cold.
And the feet kept moving, slapping on the floor. Eventually, I knew I had to get up, so I slid out of bed and walked toward the door to the bedroom and slowly opened it. We had left the nightlight on, but it was still pretty dark and moody in the rest of the cabin. And then I made my way into the main living area, and I looked on the floor, and to my horror, I saw wet footprints leading away from the door, and they led into the living space and to the door that led to the outside of the cabin. At first I was a little frozen in place, but then I followed them and looked out the back door to see the lake out there. And I swear I saw a shape standing at the edge of the lake. And the more I looked at it, the more I could feel it looking at me. And then it just disappeared. The next morning I got up and walked down to that lake, and the water lapped against the shore. And I swear I heard that whimpering sound again.
Mama? Mama. I'm very cold.
And it sent a chill up my spine. I made my way back to the cabin and was thankful this was our last night there. And we packed up. And as we drove away, I looked at that lake and wondered what had gone on there. As we reached the edge of the property where the cabin was, we saw somebody on an ATV, and we waved at them and stopped. We ended up chatting about the property and how quaint the cabins were. And then I mentioned something about that lake, and the person just shook their head and said it's such a sad story. And I asked, "What do you mean?" And he said a small child had gotten free of their parents from one of the other cabins and had fallen into the lake and drowned. This sent a chill up my spine. I knew who the visitor was to my cabin. Needless to say, we would never go back to that cabin again.